Welcome back, everybody, to The Truth About Addiction. I am really excited about today's interview for two reasons. One, the young woman I'm interviewing, I am convinced, is going to be an international pop sensation, and we get to have her here before her life blows up. So you're welcome. And her journey is totally non-traditional in the sense that she is sober curious. She had a period of full abstinence, and now she is testing the waters again. The ending of the story remains to be told, and she knows she may have to reckon with full-blown sobriety in her future. But in the meantime, for the people who are not sure, this episode is for you. As a singer, dancer, actress, and content creator, Tori Kay is a true entertainer. She is here to inspire the world through all forms of art. Tori Kay's music is pop with an excited blend of urban, EDM, and rock sounds. Her music inspires others to be their authentic selves. Her first debut original song and video for her empowering anthem Girl Power dropped in 2014. She also toured with Kids Bop in 2014 and has acted in a variety of productions. Her most recent music project, See the Vision, is a collection of songs spanning across several genres. Tori Kay's journey as a solo artist can be found on her YouTube channel, Tori Kay TV. You can see her on a billboard or when you open up Hulu as the face of American Horror Story double feature. Watch out for her on the big screen and follow her on all social media platforms at Tori Kay Unedited to keep up with her shows and releases. Stick around. This is a juicy one.
Tell me what you need and tell me where you bleed, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Truth About Addiction. I have to be perfectly honest. I am fangirling right now with who I have across from me virtually, because not that long ago, I was at an event. I didn't even know the host of the event. I had just been invited by a third-party person.
That's an LA thing too. That's so normal.
It wasn't even going to go. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And 5, 6, 7, 8, there's this like adorable girl shaking her ass on the dance floor. And I'm like, okay. Cut to the girl gets on stage and puts Britney Spears circa VMAs Snake Around Your Neck, Slave for You to shame. And by the way, because I'm going to age myself, that was my like idol of all idols when I thought I was going to get a record deal.
There's no age to idling Britney Spears. I promise you. I idol her as well. It's every demographic. I promise.
But then you are a real person I can touch and interact with, and you're better than her by a long shot. And I was like, who the fucking hell? This super.
I was about to ask if we can curse, but clearly we can. Okay, cool.
I'm a New Yorker. There's a lot of F-bombs. So who I have across from me is Tori Kay. Hi. She is such an unbelievable quadruple threat. I mean, probably so much more than that. And we're going to get into it. And we've tagged each other into different performances we've had since that moment.
Yes.
And we've also touched a little bit on your sober journey.
Yeah. And it's on journey, for sure. Emphasis on journey.
Emphasis on journey. And this is not going to be this cookie cutter story of a really traumatic childhood followed by a really severe addiction, followed by a complete rock bottom, followed by the road to recovery. That is not what this is going to be. This is going to be really different. I would consider Tori under the sober curious umbrella, which I think a lot of people in your generation are falling in, which I fucking love. And I thought it would be so important to have this conversation with you.
Yeah.
And to get to how on earth you're navigating this very confusing time in your life with the fact that you are trying to be a goddamn superstar, which
She's attempting. She's attempting. I'm not sure if navigating is a good word for it because I don't even know if that's like, like, I don't know if I'm navigating. I wouldn't give myself that credit, but she's attempting. I could say attempting.
we are attempting. Okay, so Tori, please say hello to the audience and just kick this conversation off. Tell us a little bit about who you are and who you are as a human, as an entertainer, how sort of your journey began, and we'll go from there.
Well, first of all, I have to say a big thank you for having me. Just because I know, especially with you considering like somewhat sober is what I consider myself, but also sober curious. That I'm really like you have welcomed me with open arms, which has been really interesting in the alcoholic sober space, who accepts you and who doesn't. So I really appreciate you having me on. And obviously, just like the fact that we've always shared performance on a performance level, on a sober level, and on a human level, I have so much respect for you. So thank you so much for having me. But yeah, my story has been it's a journey. Emphasis on journey is what we said earlier. I'm from Texas. I grew up with a family of drinkers. For sure. Like that's the start. And what we were discussing earlier is it's truly like a DNA case for me. It truly is how I'm wired and I feel like at one point in my life, I tried to beat the system in my brain and then realized that that's really not possible with me, like at all. Like at one point I was like, but I want to. My brain was like, well, that's not how you work. And yeah, that's kind of, I didn't drink at all. Like I know a lot of people, especially with family of drinkers, I would say part of my family, my father's side of the family, does lean towards more of the alcoholic addiction side. And I witnessed a lot of that growing up, but never partaked. So I don't have that story of like, I was in it at a young age. No, like I actually did the opposite. I witnessed it and I did not have my first drink truly, truly, truly until I was 21. Did not drink anything because I knew that I was not going to be like, I was like, I'm half these people. I'm not going to be able to handle it or navigate it in a sense that's healthy for me, especially with the career I was going towards. So I knew I wanted to get to LA. I wanted to pursue music. And with that, I knew I needed to be level-headed because this industry can really mess you up. Drugs and alcohol aside. So I really told myself, don't drink until you're 21. Or for the most part, I really thought I was never going to drink. A lot of the trauma I also experienced with my father's family stemmed from drinking. Like a lot of the times, any story that I have where I'm like, that really messed me up as a kid, or that was something that I'm currently working on in therapy is because they were drunk or intoxicated. So I think a lot of that stemmed my choice of not wanting to drink came from those experiences as well. And then I hit 21 and I was living in LA. And I had fun friends. I wanted to have a grand old time. I was finally able to go clubbing. I really just I feel like my whole life, especially growing up in Dallas, Texas, very like Southern Baptist, I was taught to be very like in a box. Like I was very I feel like controlling of myself. Like I was like, I'm not going to get tattoos. I'm not going to do any of this. I'm not going to ride a motorcycle. Like I had a lot of rules for myself at like 5 years old. So at 21, I really had like that Britney Spears, like breaking out of Disney Channel, like I'm going to shave my head moment. Yeah. Because I really wanted to break out of these rules. Not only I feel like my DNA put on me, but also myself in protection. Yeah. And after drinking for a good 6 months, I realized, yeah, I can't break that system. I can't break that system without boundaries. I can't break that system without awareness to my problems. And I can't break that system without some kind of help in the form of therapy. So immediately 6 months after, literally, I'm like, I had my first drink at 21. 6 months later, I was like, I will not be able to survive at the rate that I'm going. And to be able to recognize that in 6 months, my mom was like, I was getting home at like 7 a.m. Like my life fully went down. And I was like, if this is how drastically my life can change in 6 months, just because I started drinking, like I was also able to analyze, like, this is the cause of this. Because there was nothing else that was happening other than me drinking. That was the only change. That really caused a downfall for me, not only mentally, but physically, emotionally. I was just drained in all the senses. So yeah, I got into therapy and was sober for 6 months. And now that I've been sober for 6 months, I'm trying to work with a therapist on being somewhat sober. They call it like I'm able to drink socially. And I worked with a therapist to be able to set boundaries on myself and really find the root cause of what problems were making me catapult into such terrible situations. And yeah, you really can't fight the DNA. So now I'm working on setting boundaries and I'm 22 now. So trying to figure out the journey of what exactly my life will look like with alcohol and what my main struggle was alcohol. I never really had a struggle with anything else, but I also never dabbled in anything else. I really just had 6 months with alcohol and I was like, oh, this needs to be stopped for sure. And now I'm here. Now I'm here on a sober podcast.
I love
And
it. I love it.
now,
I have so many questions. Okay, so
yeah.
first of all, to the
Mhm.
extent that you're comfortable disclosing
Yeah.
it, this, because you can always say, yeah, no, we're not talking about that.
Mhm.
Can you think of, or I should say, what comes to mind when you think about your childhood? And that's, by the way, very common to have, at least initially, that sort of complete opposite stance of,
Mhm.
it's super self-protective to be like, if that is my fate, I'm going to
Yeah.
hardcore avoid like the plague. But
Mhm.
what did you witness? What
Mm.
were some core memories of stuff that you saw on your father's side, whether
Mm.
it was around you or directly to you, that you feel like shaped some of that protective mechanism for you to be like, I
Yeah.
can't touch this shit?
I would say my mom protected me from a lot of it. And I think a lot of it I have blocked out, to be fully honest. I'm working through in therapy, really identifying with those moments. Cause I'm one of those when I want to know the truth. Like I'm really not okay with living the rest of my life completely detached from my childhood. I really want to work through those things. I will say, like, for example, a certain family member on my dad's side was just always drunk to where it was like literally his personality. I didn't realize that what that was. Like I just knew that that's how he was and he would say things. And I didn't like being raised as a child, just being able to let an adult pass with whatever they said or did. And it was because they were intoxicated. A lot of times my father specifically was a very aggressive alcoholic, and also a narcissist. So I think it was a lot of layers on top of that. Um, that when he drank, there was a lot of physical violence or just aggressiveness in general. Or like driving drunk. There was many times I remember going out with my friends and my father came and picked me up completely intoxicated and I thought it was normal. Like we literally fell into a ditch. He drove into a ditch and my two friends that were with me lost their shit, were like screaming, "Oh my God." And I'm sitting there like, "Isn't this normal?" Like
Mm.
there was definitely moments in my life where I was like, oh wait, this happens all the time. Like this isn't normal that your dad just doesn't can't drive correctly. Like what? And they were all, and I'm sure they all went home like praying that they got home safely and like told their parents about it, and they were never able to hang out with me again. And I did go to a point whenever because I lived alone with my father, he got full custody of me somehow. And so it was just me and him in that house and a lot of watching addiction. I watched addiction firsthand. And I didn't let my friends come over. I didn't let any of that because I didn't want them to see it. And it was almost like I got to a point when I recognized, like, wait, this isn't normal. I wanted to protect everyone from it.
Mm.
And I also would lie for my dad a lot too. And I feel like a lot of my father's side of the family just lie for each other and manipulate people for each other. It was really just like a cultural thing that I experienced, and I just didn't want to carry that along with me for sure.
Was he physically violent with you?
Yes. Yeah. CPS was called many times. I was actually in court mandated therapy. I had 4 hours of court mandated therapy every single week with two different therapists, 2 hours with my own personal one, and then an hour on my own and an hour with my father with I think it was a reconciliation therapist as well. I don't know a lot of it because I was 13, so a lot of it was also kept from me because technically I was a minor. So I'm still again putting the pieces together of what exactly was told to me that was correct and what wasn't told to me, which is understandable. I was 13, so there's a lot of it that I could grasp because of my age, but I also wasn't told, so I didn't really have correct information. But yes, I had many, many years of therapy, and I was told to journal. And so I had to journal all these experiences because he also manipulated me into thinking that I was the cause of all these situations, even though it was actually him not being able to handle his emotions and drinking and all that. And for a sense, like you say, with alcoholics, I definitely think that he was always an alcoholic, but my parents' divorce, like my mom divorcing him, really catapulted his alcoholism. And that obviously was just at the time where he got full custody and I was living by himself. So I really witnessed the like deep, deep addiction and the causes of that, and being his only biological kid and daughter was a big part of that too, on how can you literally treat your only offspring this way. Yeah. And the manipulation that comes with that, just to protect the fact that you were drunk driving and you were drunk this and you were drunk that, so that he could keep custody of me just for a sense of control. I don't think he actually genuinely wanted to have me. Actually, I know he did not want to have me. He just didn't want my mom to have me. So that was really like the start of my, oh, this is an issue that's in my DNA for sure. So when I did have my struggles with alcohol, I knew exactly where it stemmed from.
Yep. Yeah. How old were you when your parents got divorced?
I was 13, 12 or 13. Mm-hmm.
And even though all that stuff was happening when they were together, your father ends up having sole custody of you
Yes.
at that time. How long did that last?
I technically ran away from home, which legally, because he had full custody of me, I ran away from home. But I really just moved to LA with my mom because I wanted to be with my mom. I also ran away from home many times before moving to LA with my mom. I ran away and refused to let him have me and just ran to my mom's house, literally physically, and drove a car to my mom's house at 16. So I officially got away with him. So I was living alone with him for 3 years. Yes. I learned a lot in those 3 years. I'm probably solely in therapy because of those 3 years. Yes.
Well, I mean, I will say, I don't know if this will land with you, but I don't think I knew this till so many years after the fact, but the extent to which I tried to control my world feels now in hindsight like a direct result of the absolute chaos and dysfunction I was witnessing. And so for me, I also didn't dabble with anything, also till I was about 21. I was like, I will be the perfect student, the perfect dancer. I will please and perform. I will mediate, and I will make everyone else in the room comfortable at the expense of myself, because that's what makes me feel safe in the world. And since all this stuff is completely out of control, I am going to control every other thing I possibly can.
Yes.
And
that's interesting. Even working with my therapist, literally just last week, my session, I identified the fact that I am so controlling of my life, to a sense that I will only actually identify with the trauma that I can physically control. I identify with the fact that I'm alcoholic because I feel like I can control that. Even my boundaries with alcohol is fully because I was trained to be controlling and try to control the only thing that I have. Like there's some like trauma that I've dealt with that I haven't been able to analyze or recognize or be aware of. And my therapist is like, hey, you have trauma with that. And I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, yes, you do. You just can't analyze it because you aren't the controlling one of that. It's very fascinating. Like even down to my trauma, I can only analyze it if I'm able. I feel like I have a hold of it. If I have a hold of it, cool. Then we're good. If not, I'm screwed.
that is so fascinating because, you know, my personal story, I feel like my true spiritual transformation didn't happen until not after I overdosed, because I was sure that I could control things and just have it look different and not be so scary. That didn't work. Not years into my recovery, when everybody was like, you need to work these steps, you need to believe in God, you need to consider yourself an alcoholic. I was like, nope, 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 nope. And so I spent like 5 years into sobriety trying to still control my entire world, because it was so deeply ingrained, and it's how I learned to stay attached to my caregivers. So it's how I made sure to feel love and security. And so I'll be damned if all you people are going to come in here and tell me to untether all that shit when I had to do it to literally survive.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, I got the boyfriend and the grades and the this and the that. Like, who are you going to come in here and tell me, like, you need to know you actually have lost it all. So the joke's on you. And so I honestly didn't have my first like surrender experiment, if you will, until my marriage was falling apart. And I tried every trick I had in my bag of tricks to control the way this man felt about me, the way he saw me, the just it was not going to end, because if it ended, I was done because I had no sense of self-worth. And so when that thing unraveled, that was the real time where I had the kind of emotional bottom
Mm.
that required me to fucking surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Surrender a sense of neat and orderly control over my world, which of course is really funny because if you think about just a normal 24-hour day, you know, getting in your car, driving to wherever you're going to go, we don't know what's going to happen at all. Period. We can pay attention while we're driving. We can try to respond and not react to something. We can have some agency and some sovereignty over.
See, this kind of conversation, because I'm so controlling and I'm really working on it, makes me want to throw up, like genuinely.
Good.
Like I know that's a thing, but I physically cannot identify with that. It's a problem.
No, and I get it. And I think it is for a perfectionist, for someone whose nervous system has literally created circuitry around control to survive. It is unimaginable until something happens where all of that stuff won't work. And so it's going to be really fascinating what that moment in your life is going to be, because the truth is, for me, like some of my hardest lived experiences were, to name a few, overcoming my husband's extramarital affair, because there is no controlling way out of those feelings. There is. I could have hardened up and been like, fuck you, bitch, and moved on, but I still would have had the heartache. I could have armored up.
That's me for sure.
And been
My
less
mechanism is
vulnerable.
immediately to, I'm done.
But, and that could have felt like control. Okay, you did this.
It does. It feels great.
It does, but it never touches the root of the heartache, which is in here, which actually happened to me, which I can try to pretend it didn't, but it did. And so I'm going to bring that with me wherever else I go. And then again, like the loss of multiple pregnancies, the loss of my dad, the loss of my sister. Try controlling when someone you love dies. You can't. You can't. And so, you know, I guess in my recovery, the one of the hardest but most important things I've learned is that perfectionism really works until
the big until
we're dealing with matters of the heart.
Yes.
And then it falls completely flat. So I get it. Like imagine a trauma so complicated and so deep and so painful that the only way to make sense of it is to go, that wasn't fair at all.
Yeah.
That wasn't fair at all. I didn't deserve any of that. And so what I've learned about control is that underneath it is a deep desire to rewrite the script of what happened.
It's fear.
Instead of feeling the grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think a lot of mine stemmed from, because luckily I've never had to face specific obstacles like you have in life and those specific emotional challenges where you can't control. But I've seen mine reflect in the crazy coping mechanisms I've developed to where, like you said, cheating or something like that, where it's like, oh my gosh, like your emotions, I shut down, I have a wall, I detach. That's why I say, like, I have genuinely forgotten most of my childhood because it's a coping mechanism that my brain has placed. But that doesn't just go away. When you're not in trauma anymore, it doesn't just go away. So my therapist has worked with me like, I can't live like that forever because then even if my life is happy, and I would say I'm genuinely pretty happy at this point in my life, I'm still coping on a daily. So I don't actually genuinely feel happy. I just feel like I'm coping because of the trauma I've dealt with, I haven't worked through, and my brain is still coping. It's so fascinating to me how my brain is wired in that way. And along with the coping mechanisms, like you said, feeling emotions, the only time I would ever actually, like, I still to this day struggle with crying. Like, I say I'm an emotional person, but like I am only like a person who's emotional after the sense. Like, for instance, I had a friend of mine pass away. I did not grieve and actually let myself cry until 4 months later. And I had a panic attack on the floor. Like, if I cry, I'm crying for 5 hours, but I don't normally cry like a normal human. The only time I was able to cry is when I was drunk. So when I was drunk, I would have like this emotional release because I was truly unable to control myself. I was unable to control my emotions. I was unable to control where I was. I felt so free in that moment. So I thought, right? Free, whatever the sense that is. I'm trying to find my now sober free, I think is the hardest thing, and my sober zen, because then I was like able to release whenever. And
Yes.
it felt so amazing that I was just able to like cry and let it go.
Well,
But
and
now people, even I even tell like my trauma stories too. I tell it like it's a stand-up comedy.
yeah.
Like they're like, oh my God, you should do stand-up. I'm like, with what stories? My childhood trauma. That's all I have. Like it truly is a problem and I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely resonate with your sense of control and like trying to navigate emotions now that you're trying to heal and deal with life in a healthy sense.
Well, and also like to be really honest about addiction, I've been reading, I read so much outside literature, like just self-help books. I'm obsessed. And there's this really amazing guy. He's a physician, but he's done a ton of work with addiction and addicts, and his name is Gabor Mate. And I hope, God willing, I'll have a chance to speak to this man at some point in my journey, releasing my book. But he says we need to sort of flip the script, and instead of looking at addiction as an abnormality,
Mm-hmm.
reframe it as a very normal response to abnormal circumstances. So I say that because no shit, drinking felt good.
Oh yeah.
If your entire life was
Yeah.
numbing control,
Mm-hmm.
and then you finally have a chance to put your fucking fight or flight nervous system at rest,
Yeah.
all of that is going to come out. And how liberating, because crying is, until we're taught that it isn't, one of the most natural responses of human beings to release energy,
Yeah.
period, to get back to a state of self-regulation. It is natural. And we will ourselves out of it. We freeze ourselves out of it through trauma response. We get taught not to do it, and everything on top of that that you could imagine. And so let's also just be really honest that that shit really, really works until it doesn't.
Right.
And
Right.
there is a fucking reason why we are anesthetizing.
Yeah.
And it's not like a, there's often in recovery, there can be this like what a fucking hot mess I was. What a very self-deprecating, very harsh, very like, I fucking was out of control. And it's like, yes, but like, yes, but you witnessed and experienced like such hell that a young child should never. And you were so crafty
Oh yeah.
in how you coped. And
Mhm.
like, thank God you were.
Yeah.
Also, before it got so dire, thank God you changed course. But let's not come in here and cast this like harsh
Oh yeah.
judgment around, right? Because
Yeah.
we're smart as fuck.
Yeah.
We're
I feel like
out an
truly the
escape
6
route.
months, and that's such a good point because that is how I looked at those 6 months of my life, which is so crazy to think 6 months. It felt so much longer than 6 months.
I'm sure it did.
6 months of my life. That felt like 5 years in one. Truly. It was the longest 6 months of my life.
Listen, girl, when you're coming home at 7 a.m. for 6 months straight, that might as well be the
It practically is 5 years. I was awake for 5 years. Genuine. I was truly intoxicated for like 5 years straight when I really think about it. If you do the math, I'm sure. But a lot of it is like I look back on like videos of me. I think that's really where like because social media is so big. There's so much content of me in that state is the best way I can put it. And I'm not proud of those moments. I think that's why I put such a negative tints on it, is because I'm not proud.
Sure.
But I also, like you just said, like that's such a good point because I also felt my most free in those moments. I had, like you said, my brain had coped so much and saved me so much for 21 years of my life that I actually, like those 6 months, I technically gave my brain a break. I was
Yep.
able to say, it's like my brain finally took a breath and was like, okay, cool, do whatever you want. Like, that's what you want to do. All right, girl. Like we're pausing out. We're
Right.
clocking out. This is our timestamp. We're clocking.
We're
Like, okay.
standing down.
Yeah, like we're clocking. If that's what you want to do, like, thank God we got to breathe. And I think that's
Exactly.
why it became so addictive, obviously, at the end of the day. Like that's why you become so addicted to it. Um, and
Yes,
although I enjoyed those 6 months, I also feel like my I needed it for sure. Uh,
absolutely. And so I
but
want to know,
it wasn't sustainable.
right. So tell me
Mhm.
or take me to,
Yeah.
the second half of month 6. What does a night out
Uh-huh.
for Tori Kay look like? How does it end? How do
Yeah.
you feel the next morning?
So
What's
terrible.
your self-talk? And
Mhm.
what strikes you sober? Like what makes you go, oh fuck no, like this is
Yeah.
not working.
Oh yeah. Um, I think it got to a point, and I'll just summarize it like this, because it's a long story. Because there is genuinely one night that was like, um, my roommate thought I was dead in the morning. I was naked on my dog's bed. My room was trashed. My door was actually unlocked because I think I had people over.
Mm.
Genuinely don't know. I blacked out. And yeah, it was a Monday morning. And if you know me, I'm a workaholic. I'm up at 6 a.m. I'm at the gym. My mom was a fitness instructor and life coach growing up. So I also had that's the other half of me. And those halves battle it out. Battle it out because I have
Oh yeah.
my father's side. And then on top of that, I had my mom who was put together. I mean, you've met my mom. She's put together. She's beautiful. She's positive words of affirmation is the only words in her dictionary. I don't think negative words exist to her. Like it truly is like the way she's crafted herself has been beautiful. And I'm so thankful that I was half raised by someone like that. So
Mm.
it was interesting going from 3 years with this person to then now this is my sole person because I'm like, this is the only person that is healthy and I will probably survive life with. And
Yep.
now obviously it makes sense as to why she's my best friend and I go to all these events with her and I do everything with her because it's truly the only way I can keep my head above water outside of my own independence. Um, so with the sense my mom was like, she didn't even want to know. It got to a point where my mom didn't even want to know what I did.
Mm.
And it's still something that I've done since we moved to LA because living in LA is scary, especially as a young woman. Where I text my mom I got home every single night, to where my mom called me and said, I can no longer let you text me when you get home
Mm.
because it was heartbreaking for her. And there was only so much she could do as a parent. She tried everything. She would send me YouTube videos. She tried everything. She tried everything. Bless her heart. And it did get to a point where I think she was slowly like, she just needs to grasp this herself.
Mm.
And I did. I truly did. So I also respect the fact that as my mom, she had to take a step back. So is that among the actual events that occurred, among the fact that my roommate was absolutely traumatized and she had only lived with me for like 2 months. So imagine moving in with a 22-year-old who was, or a 21-year-old who was discovering alcohol for the first time and apparently was an addict. Oh, who knew? And could not manage it. So imagine. And she's like, she can drink. She's a normal human being. She's also in the industry. Like she's able to manage it. And she watched me, like for sure. It was also looking at life from her perspective where I was like, oh, there's a
Mm,
problem. And it was, I woke up, she woke me up and was like, girl,
mm,
mm-mm. And my mom didn't want to know. She didn't really want to know. And I also got to a point that night where I genuinely, like, my roommate was asking me questions. Like, I don't think she really wanted to know because it also occurred in our house. So I'm like, she was asleep. She's like, I don't really want to know what happened, but like, if you want to tell me, that's fine. Like, I won't at all because it was in the room next door, kind of thing. um, but
mm,
I actually could not tell her if I was roofied or if I truly drank that much. Like I actually to this day don't know if it was like people roofie people in a sense of like in harm, like that's harmful to the other person. I truly had to identify with the fact that the way I was drinking was harmful to myself because I put it in the sense of I got so obliterated that I thought someone was putting me in harm from roofing me. But in a sense, I was like, I actually don't know. It could have just been me. Which
yeah.
is like the only way I could put that sense into terms was the fact that I was harming myself. Those are the words I used. Was
Yep.
that I drank so much the night before that I was harming myself. And then I threw up for 3 days straight because I am also a tiny little human being that can't handle as much alcohol as I was drinking. So I think that's also why it happened in 6 months. Was
Yep.
because I was drinking nothing to drinking too much for my body size.
Yep.
Too much for a human, but especially too much for my body size to where I truly, my body genuinely, like I was throwing up for 3 days. I remember I did a TikTok live stream and I had to pause the video and go throw up in the bathroom and come back. And I
Mm.
was full glam. Oh, I was ready. I was selling products on TikTok Shop. I was so ready. Like that's the thing. I always had myself put together,
Oh, yeah.
but I really did not. I was falling apart at the seams, but
Mm.
she was living a life. I don't know if it was the best one, but she was living for sure. She was living it up. I don't remember
Girl,
none of
I know. I have so many of those stories, and
oh,
also so many stories I don't remember and that I'll never know for sure that I participated in because I
yeah.
blacked
But I
out.
truly went from the call of my mom saying, "Don't text me when you get home anymore. I can't handle it." And I called her probably 2 days later and called her and said, "I need to get back into therapy for
Mm.
addiction, and I'm gonna be sober." And that was my next call.
Mm.
And my mom was like, my mom still to this day is like, I don't know what happened in those 2 days, but thank God. Because I
And
really,
I want to know then, right there from that moment, the sort of full blown version of sobriety and some of what came up for you. How, like, did you go to meetings? Did you try to work the 12 steps? Was it just through therapy? Tell me kind of what that was for you. And then the decision that
Mhm.
leads us more to where you are now, which is, can I manage this? Um, which by the way, is a question that most addicts ask themselves and try to figure
Yeah,
out.
for some reason, I'm one of those bold ones that's like, YOLO, we'll figure it out for everybody. I don't know. I'm like, hey, I literally just told you, you're like, so how is your somewhat sober situation going on? I'm like, I don't know. I'm 4 months in. I'll let you know. Like, it's either going to go well or it's not. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
Like,
That's
I feel
right.
like
That's
I'm really just a little guinea pig for everyone. But
right. So
yeah, I
just
don't
maybe
know.
take me through the full
Yeah.
stop sober and
Mhm.
then that, well, what if it could be this plus sometimes that in
Yeah.
that decision?
Yeah. So I went full sober. I didn't do AA. I think I really I honestly didn't do a lot of research with AA or anything like that. I know that I really didn't want to sit in a seminar. There was something about me, I think it's a sense of control, that I was like, I want someone just to pay attention to me and help me out. No, truly, I think that's why I chose just a therapy route. was I wanted someone to step by step hold my hand. And I also, like, I didn't go the token route. I also think that I have imposter syndrome in every single aspect of my life. And
Mm,
being sober is one of them,
mm,
which is unfortunate for me. I'm really trying to work with that. That I do consider myself an alcoholic, and I was sober for a period of time that I am proud of, but I never let myself celebrate, nor did I get a token, nor did I want to go to AA so that I could get a token and celebrate with everyone. Um, I think I really had a hard time because, in a sense of like comparing my story to yours, I never felt like I was able to have that label.
mhm,
And that really affected the way my sober journey went
mm,
because I really didn't lean on other sober people. None of my life really changed. Um, I just chose the decision for myself. So I feel
mhm,
like a lot of the times when people say, "Oh, I'm sober now," it means that kind of like the people you surround yourself are now sober. It's all those things that never really changed for me because I always felt like such an imposter. So I was kind of like, it was really sober people came to me in a very weird universe spiritual way. Like the first date I went on after being sober was with the guy who had been sober for 10 years. And I was like, what? I was like, I swear to God, I'd never met another sober person in my life. And now I'm on a date with one. And I didn't know that until I sat down at this restaurant. Like it came in very weird senses. I started working with this production company and I was shooting with them probably for a good 2 months. And then randomly they were like, hey, would you shoot for this like alcoholic? It's kind of like seltzer. And I was like, yeah, sure, but I am sober. So if you could just dump it out and put water in it, I'd really appreciate like rinse it a little bit. Like I'd really appreciate that. And the guy who ran the production company, mind you, I'd worked with him for 2 months at this point, was like, oh my God, dude, how long have you been sober? I'm sober. He's like, that totally makes sense. I was like, what? Like, I had never met a sober person in my life until that I knew of until decided to become sober. So I had the weird, like, I didn't really choose to put myself in a place of sober people, but the universe was like, bitch, you need this. Like, it just kind of placed me. Like, even though I was trying to be controlling and like live my life like a normal person and just be in therapy and deal with it in secret, they were like, nah, girl, you gonna have to talk about it. Because then I was in places where I had to talk about being sober. Because I also felt that too. If I was in a space where people were talking about being sober, I was gonna have to talk about my struggle and talk about being sober. And I'm not an emotional person like that. I'm very detached. So I was like, I don't want to put myself in those places.
mm.
Yeah. And the universe really said, you thought, and like laughed in my
You're gonna
face.
outsmart.
Yeah. And then I did the like even the show, Amare. And like I'm meeting her, I'm like, oh my God, she's so fun. And then we're like, we're gonna go to Vegas. And I'm like, cool. I'm gonna have to somehow talk about the fact that I'm only drinking Diet Coke all night. Like that's also the thing too. It slowly comes up in conversation because I only drink Diet Coke at this. Literally all I drink is Diet Dr. Pepper, Diet Coke at this point. And then no, finding out that you, Ricky, and Rochelle are all sober, I was like, what is going on? Like I can escape it as much as I fucking want to, but the universe is like, nah, bitch, psych. So that was kind of funny about my sober journey.
Oh
Uh,
my God.
and also like my mom trying to hold my hand through this, but also like that girl loves a red wine or a vodka soda everywhere we go. But she can actually manage it, which has also been so interesting now that I'm sober to be able to go out with someone consistently who can healthily drink.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so it's possible, you know?
Mm.
I'm just not that person. That's cool for you. I don't have those skills.
I don't
Um,
know how many times I've said to my husband over the years, like, and he rarely drinks, but when he does,
like that's so good for
are
you.
you are you gonna finish that? He's like, no, I don't really want any more. I'm like, that literally makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
Like, you and I are not wired the
same
same
people.
because
Yeah.
I would have
It
had
really makes
my
you
first,
realize how they don't understand your struggle.
oh God.
Like, for example, my roommate and I would buy bottles of wine. She likes red wine, I like white wine. And the way when I this is when I was drinking, the white wine would be gone in 2 days, like a day. And I would just slowly, like the red wine was still in the fridge, like slowly just, she would just like have a little sip while she's watching TV. And I'm like downing the bottle in my room. Like we are not the same person, you know.
We are not the
We're
same.
not the same person.
Okay,
So yeah, I started to set boundaries.
this is
Yeah.
so I have also like a slew of things to say, and I'll get to them in a
Yeah.
second, but I want to know
How
because it feels like,
the world made me choose to try again.
well, yeah, it's so fascinating because you're straddling two things at once,
Yes.
which is this like very clear knowing and understanding that you don't drink like a normal person does. You drink like an alcoholic does. Okay.
Yes.
And that the effect it has on you is wildly different than someone who can manage their drinking. And because I feel like, the addiction to control is at like the epicenter of
Mm-hmm.
of it all, and you're
Mm-hmm.
still tethered to that.
Mm-hmm.
You're like,
No,
but
yeah, I know. I
but
have this
watch me
conversation with a
try.
lot of sober people, and they're all like,
Watch me try, but
yeah.
watch me try. So tell me how you're dealing with like the part of you that
No, that's exactly what it
knows
is. That's exactly what it is. Watch me try is the motto of my somewhat sober. Watch me try.
Tell me
Yeah.
how are you like that's like a serious tension to be straddling. Like in your bones,
Oh yeah.
this ain't good for you. You ain't
Mm.
good for it. It doesn't work for you really. But also, I'll be damned if I ain't gonna try to find a way. What does that look like? How does that feel emotionally? Are you constantly monitoring when you
Oh
do have
yeah.
a drink?
Absolutely.
Is it yes, tell me.
The only reason I think I'm able to do this is because my brain is wired a very specific way. Because I've worked with a therapist to really set the rules for me. I am a very, like you said, controlling. I'm a perfectionist. For me, it's goals. For me, it's I can do this and I'm determined. For me, it's I want to break the chapter because also when I say I'm sober, I also feel like I kind of give credit to my father for like giving me that DNA. So part of me is like, well, I am an addict, but, and this is my 22-year-old brain. I feel like we should do another interview by the time I'm 24 and we'll really see what changes. Truly. Um, that I'm like, I refuse. Like, I'm going to be able to find a good balance for myself. I want to be able to drink socially. So the only time I'm ever able to drink is socially. I have boundaries that I'm not able to take shots. Shot. I can't. I'm not allowed. That was a big problem. And I say that like in a joking sense, but it's so, so true. A lot of the times I realized I was drinking too much because I was taking shot after shot after shot. And I was like, I'm just a party girl. No, we got to take the party out of the girl. Okay. So no shots. I can't drink at home at all. So that was a lot of the problem too, is I would get way, way, way too drunk at home, chugging my bottle of white wine. And then I'd take shots with my friends out or pre-gaming because I feel like a lot of pre-gaming is taking shots. So I would chug the bottle of wine before my friends got here. My friends get here, cool, pre-gaming, shots. And then I'd get to the bar and have a bunch of cocktails or whatever. My favorite was a vodka soda or like a dirty Shirley. And then I'd come home and drink another bottle of wine. Was my normal routine, which is a concoction of being absolutely on the floor, throwing up the next day. Unable to live life. So a lot of that is shots. I'm also unable to drink while I'm like if I'm driving. Like that's not even a sip. That's not nothing. Because that is something I dealt with. I was a staple. I can drive, I'm sober enough. I don't know why that's always my drunk voice, but I know I sounded like that. I can drive, I'm sober enough. I totally can. I don't remember the drive home. And that's really illegal, so I'm not gonna share much more than that. And then the other one is the obvious. I'm only allowed to have one drink. Even if I'm not driving, even if I'm out, I'm only allowed one drink. If I'm there for more than 3 hours, I can have two. But as my friends like to call me, 2-drink TK. I am 2-drink TK. That is the only time I'm allowed to drink. So I've been managing this for, I think, a little over 4 months. I was sober for 6 months, and I never really planned my first time to drink because I didn't want to be excited about it. I only had my first drink randomly. I specifically chose that because I didn't want to be looking forward to my first drink and like running up to the bar and to the bartender to order one, because that really would have been me. So I was randomly at an event. I think it's when like the Barbie movie came out or something. I know I was in like bright pink. That's all I think I so I'm like I equate that with Barbie. I don't know.
Love that.
And it truly is not like I didn't want it to be such a moment for myself because I didn't want to give myself that moment. And yeah, I had one vodka soda and I did very good. And I've continued with those boundaries. I've never broken them. I'm a very strong-minded person. And so I'm determined to be able to find a balance for myself. I've done a pretty good job so far, and I am working with my therapist, and I tell my therapist all the time, because as I'm sure you can tell right now, I'm just so proud of myself. So in my therapy sessions, I'm like, girl, I tell my therapist's name is Sharon. I'm like, Sharon, girl, I did so good this week. I met all my boundaries. I only had like one drink at one event, and I did so good. You know what this girl tells me? My therapist looks at me and she goes, yeah, bitch, because you're happy right now. You're so right.
Yeah.
So at this current moment, I'm able to hold those boundaries because these 4 months have been a breeze. My music's been flowing. I've gotten performances I've wanted. I really haven't been dealt with anything in the last 4 months. So that's why I say, come back to me when I'm 24, because I'm sure I'll go through some shit. And my therapist is really going to look at me and be like, well, look what happened, bitch. She wasn't happy. So that's where I'm at right now. I genuinely want to try as much as I can. I want to break my DNA cycle as much as I can. I know I am an alcoholic, but I am doing well with my boundaries at this current point. But again, like my therapist says, that's just because I'm happy. So I don't really know. This is just what I'm doing right now. I'm genuinely experimenting. That's the best way I can state it.
Gosh, what a fascinating point to be at in your life, and you're so young. I mean, goddamn,
Yeah.
like I got sober young too. I got sober at 27. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I will say a few things
Mhm.
about some of what you said,
Yeah, go for it.
which is that because I just see myself in your story so much. I was the only reason I even went to meetings is because I
Mhm.
knew one human being who was
Mm.
sober, who I had been his personal trainer months
Mhm.
and months earlier, and it was the only person in my life that I even heard was
Mm.
sober, and he was really sober from heroin for 22 years, and he was just this beautiful, bright human. The light in his eyes was so bright. And I didn't believe anything about sobriety or that it could work for me. I was sure I could control it all, but I believed in his happiness. And he was like, just fucking come with me. Just come with me. You don't have to like do anything anybody's saying. Just stick with me, kid. And
Mhm.
so, my early recovery was just like in the back, just like, oh, like I was othering myself to death. You know what I mean? I don't look like you people. I have a fucking job. I have a boyfriend. I'm fit. I'm this, I'm that. Like, look at all these things that are neat and orderly. Like, no, I'm not an alcohol. Like, I have an issue, but it's an issue you guys maybe will help me control. And then I'll just be on my merry way. Like, it was very, and for whatever
Yeah.
reason, I was, I think, scared enough by my overdose that I just like kept following him around, and I was smoking weed for a while I was in recovery, and then I was like, they keep saying from the neck up. Like, does that mean I can't smoke? And he's like, Sam, you
Okay,
do.
that's what's so funny about living in LA and saying that I'm somewhat sober. Everyone just thinks I just smoke weed. I
Yep,
don't smoke weed.
yep,
Weed, I have too much anxiety to smoke weed. So genuinely, my only thing was alcoholism.
yeah.
But
Oh
that
yeah.
is,
Oh yeah. LA sober and actual sober are two very
yeah,
different things.
very different things. Yes. People just think I'm a pothead when I say that, and I
Yep.
just gotta
Yep.
clarify.
So anyway, at that point, I was like, okay, I guess I have to stop that too. So I like stopped it all and went through that year with him taking me through the steps. But I was like, I do not like whatever God you guys are talking about feels super religious and gross. I don't get down with that. I don't believe in God. I was taught not to believe in God. That's not even safe to believe in God from the childhood I came from. So no, thank you. Self-reliance is my jam. And I guess I'll just try to like physically abstain for a while. So I was kind of like a miserable human because I had no, what occurred to me 6 months into that period was how relentless my inner critic was. The level of self-laceration on everything. You're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, you don't sound good enough, you don't dance well enough. Like and having to be sober through that where I wasn't drinking or doing anything to numb that led to like the very first emotional break at a meeting where I started crying because I was like, I did not get like when you guys were like, oh, it made me feel like the life of the party. I was always super social. I was that like dancer chick that's like, I don't need a drink, but if I have one, cool. And I don't get what you people are talking about. I don't get it. I don't identify with any of this shit. And then I was like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, like that part of me is running my life. She is the fucking
Yeah.
CEO. She's like, bitch, do better. And
Mhm.
so it was unfucking manageable to me. So I just was like, okay, maybe I belong here, but also like fuck all these rules and stuff. And hopefully you'll just teach me how to drink like a lady. And then that guy who took me through the steps, I went away to California. I was like feeling out moving here. Wasn't sure if I was going to move from New York. And I didn't hear from him. And I didn't hear from him. And I was like, what is wrong with Bobby? Like this fucker, is he pissed I'm in LA? Like, what is his? I was so clueless about addiction. And his wife picked up and said, Bobby relapsed. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Somebody with that much time, it was just, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. I don't know shit. And then 2 weeks after that, he killed himself. And I say that because for me, that's my story. That's part of my story. I knew at that moment, if I touched it, it was coming for me.
Yeah.
It wants me dead. Because if it fucking killed him, it's going to kill me too.
Yes.
And then I went on for 4 more years to do it my own way, all by myself. Thank you very much. I don't need your help. Bye. And it led to, I mean, complete
I'll just do this. I'll just do this.
This is why I'm sharing. It led to like insanity, just complete insanity where all of my attempts, as I said, at controlling my world just completely collapsed. And I was just left with me and my big feelings and my lack of self-worth and my shitty marriage and my shame about who I was. And, I'll tell you now, like 15 years on the other side, not only how much and how many times I've had to reimagine the steps and how many times I've had to surrender to the illusion of control. But the greatest flex of my life is that I am the cycle breaker. And I don't mean that in one of the versions of that, which is where you are, is watch me drink and watch me control it, Dad. Okay. But I think the bigger flex.
No, I agree with you. Fully agree with you.
Is I am just like you.
Yes.
But watch me do it differently. All the way. Watch me stop it in its fucking tracks. Watch me arrest this thing and turn towards my suffering and turn towards the uncertainty and learn how to live with it and cope with it and watch my life blow the fuck up as a result of it. Thank you very much, Dad. Right?
And I completely agree with you. I'm 22, but I'm a very self-aware 22. I'm also very self-aware of my sober journey, which is why I say therapist 25 times, because I want people to know I'm getting help. And then I'm not just living this free ball.
Because your girl was not in therapy.
I have someone who literally talks to me, just me, for an hour to make sure that I am not fucking my life up. So I also comfortably am doing this because I'm like, I know I have someone who would catch me when I fall because she's on the schedule. She's literally on the schedule. If I tried to slip up, she'll catch me. And she's also the same person. And I'm so glad I swear she's my soulmate in therapy form because I found someone who can also look at me when I'm celebrating my sobriety that I'm able to set my boundaries and live with them. Oh my God, I had one drink, Sharon. Aren't you proud? She's like, bitch, you're happy right now. That's why I have her in place, because I have someone who sits here and goes, okay, with me. But I will say, even with the drinking boundaries and the fuck you to my father and also to my DNA, I also say this to my DNA. I do that in many forms of my life that I'm also working on healing. So, for example, having children. Right now, I'm like, fuck you, I'm not going to have kids because I end your biological line with me. But then, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Right? Then it's like you said, okay, wouldn't it be cool to actually be sober? Okay, wouldn't it be a bigger flex to actually have kids and have a healthy family? Probably, but I know that's not where my mindset's at, you know? So I am at that. My brain's stubborn and I'm a stubborn person. And this is why I have to evolve and I feel like I'm also in a point right now where, just like I was in those 6 months where no one could tell me anything until I found it out myself. I'm
Oh,
stubborn and I know I have to do this for myself. Just like right now, saying,
absolutely.
I'm not having kids because that's even more of a, you know, than actually just having kids and being healthy and having a healthy family and being a healthy parent. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I'm very self-aware of the fact that.
Absolutely. You're incredibly
And
self-aware.
that once I grow up, I'm sure that's going to change. Just like at 21, I thought the same thing. I'm gonna be able to drink and live my life, and this is just my age. Oh, the amount of times I've heard that's just your age.
Oh
I
yeah. Oh yeah.
literally have sat down at dinner and they're like, "Oh, you're never gonna have a drink ever again in your life." I'm like, "Oh no, like I'm working through it right now." They're like, "Well, you realize it's just a normal 21-year-old, right?" I'm like, granted, if you look at my friends who don't have addiction problems, they do drink similarly to
Yep.
me because of the age.
Yep.
I know for me, it doesn't matter what age I am, I can identify with the problem.
Yep.
Also, I'm not a normal 21-year-old who's in college. I have a full-blown music career and I wake up every morning at 6 a.m. to do. No hate to other 21-year-olds. I'm just saying, like, I've always known I'm a different format of a person. So that also was abnormal behavior for me. Even if it was abnormal behavior for the age.
Mm.
I've never been normal to my age.
Yep.
So for me, I've always felt like right now I'm 22, I feel like I'm 27.
Yep.
So a lot of the times I identified in my brain, because I could have easily, especially in my alcoholic brain, been like, oh, well, this is normal. Oh my God, this is normal. I'm just a college girl. I'm not in college. I'm not living in a dorm. What are you talking about? But I could have easily done that.
Oh
To where I
yeah.
really had to look myself in the face and be like, no, bitch, you've always felt older than you are. At this point, you feel like you're 25. Would you look at a 25-year-old doing this and think, oh, she's just living her life? No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I really had to do that with myself. So I totally identify with where you're coming from, and I think it's really,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
it's
But I also identify with the fact that I'm very stubborn.
I don't know. I mean, again, I think stubborn is another word for having a strong self-will, being
Mhm.
highly self-reliant. And I think that that stems back 99% of the time to a combination of how we're wired. I'm a hardwired perfectionist, type A to the max. Came out that way, and learning that as a survival mechanism. So it's sort of like these are the makings of who we are for all the different reasons. And there's a way that that can be channeled for the highest good and
Right.
also not. And it's just a question of, as we grow up and learn, like, what ends up being for the highest good, what version of self-reliance. And in my case, I had to learn again and again in recovery that when I'm using my ambition, my intellect, my strong will in synchronicity with my intuition, which I couldn't even hear or be guided by because I had so much shame covering it, that the steps, once I reimagined them and changed the language of them, helped me to clear away. That for me is like the secret sauce. That's where all the power turns on, is when so it's not for me. It wasn't like getting rid of the trait.
Right.
Like, right? It's like every liability that people have can be directly traced to an asset. It's just how it's used,
Mhm.
right? Because your stubbornness makes you a fucking unbelievable performer, right? So there's it. So I just want to say that, and also it's really I just want to throw this out there because and I know we both have to go. I don't know if you've heard of Brene Brown.
Mm-mm.
But I would love, she's sober. She's a best-selling author. She's a social worker who ended up sort of accidentally doing like a ton of research on vulnerability and shame. And she was one of those, she's from Texas. Like, don't you fucking tell me. Like, do not tell me I'm not gonna cry. I mean, you're gonna toughen up, pull up your bootstraps and go. And
Mm-hmm.
the work she has done, the books she has written are so unbelievable. And I remember early on someone giving me one of these books that I've now read like a zillion times, gifted to a zillion friends. I have this tattoo on my back, which isn't directly from her book, but it kind of was inspired by it, which says vulnerability is my superpower. Because one of the things she unveils is that perfectionism is a great vulnerability shield because you never actually have to be seen or known. And it's so fascinating to put it around full circle to like at the beginning of our talk. You know, when I watched you perform, it was perfect, right? Calculated, so fucking rehearsed. And
Mm-hmm.
me at your age, if I were on that stage and I wasn't falling down from my cocaine addiction, that would have been me. That would have been me. I would have never stepped on the stage without 10,000 rehearsals, without every single thing. And
Right.
now I purposefully make myself, of course I rehearse, of course I prepare. But the fact that I'm given a shot to do this at all at my age, after thinking it was over, never again, I'm like, whatever happens, happens. Which
Mm-hmm.
is, for a control freak, lets me know how fucking recovered
Yeah.
I am from that deep need to be in
Yeah.
control, which is just a testament to my willingness to be vulnerable. But
Mm-hmm.
again, I had to be thrust into situations where all of my control mechanisms failed. And
Yeah.
so it will, like, first of all, just know you
Mm-hmm.
have me. Like, if you ever need to bounce something off of me, want to talk to me, have a heart to heart with me, are curious about a meeting with me, whatever. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here and I deeply respect where you are. I've been there. I get it. I know it. And maybe it'll work for you. And if it doesn't, there's a whole world out there of people who've tried every single which way as well.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually they find their way. You know,
Right.
God willing, if it doesn't kill them first, right? And that's the really scary part about this shit. Because I've lost so many people who, in their attempt at trying to control it, died. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the fucked up part. And I think, honestly, the only reason I didn't cut and paste and manipulate how my drinking and using was going to look for longer was
Mm-hmm.
because Bobby died.
Yeah.
And I got scared that
Mm-hmm.
it was coming for me. And so it's a really fascinating point, jumping off point where you are. And I so deeply respect your honesty and transparency. And this is like such a safe space. And I hope people listening who are even considering it, aren't sure
Yeah.
about it, feel comfortable about being in the in-between and not being judged, because there's a lot of judgment out there around every element of addiction. Sometimes it blows my fucking mind that people in recovery who have the most fucked up stories sit there on their high horse with a little bit of time, like, can you fucking believe they're not going to meet? Shut the fuck up. You're a fall down drunk who tried every single. No, take
Yeah.
the judgment out. That does not help anybody. That does
Yeah.
not.
Well, and I think that's why I resonated so much with you even writing your book on trying to reinvent the 12 steps. I resonate with that so much because I feel like in a form you're kind of doing what I'm doing on like, okay, cool. This isn't a cookie cutter process for everyone. Not everyone's brain's the same. Addiction is not the same for everyone. Substance, but also just mental wiring.
Yep.
This is, I know for me, and at this point in my life, I'm not sure if I'll be able to look, I might look back on this video 2 years from now. Like I said, check it on me when I'm 24.
I will.
What am I saying? Check on me in a month from now. On what has changed because life changes so much, and also on top of that, playing in a role of possible fame, being a success in
Yeah.
his career, that's a whole nother aspect that I'm preparing myself for. That I most likely know that if I hit if my career goes in any sense of the form that I would like it to go, and I get any sort of success that I am manifesting with my vision board at this right here, that I am manifesting and working every day to get towards, I will most likely have to be fully sober. I don't know if there's a world in which I'll be able to balance what I'm balancing right now and doing that. But at least I tried. You know what I mean? Like, I'm 22, fuck it. At
You
least I
need
tried.
to know that you tried 100%.
I
Yes.
tried. And if I fail, and I don't even look at it as failing, if I become fully sober, I look at it as this is what I need to do for me, which is actually more successful than the other way
100%.
around. So I have no shame in that too. If I stop drinking tomorrow, I'm so proud of the way that I tested it, and I know I needed to do it for myself. So I also just appreciate, as a sober person who's reinventing what being sober is and the addiction process looks like, I appreciate you and I respect you. And I also truly am honored to be on the podcast, because I also, as in a sense of my imposter syndrome, I feel like I don't have like as much of a terrible, like you said, like the terrible stories you've heard. Like, I've heard so many. And I think that's what's kept me from really stepping into sober places. I have an imposter syndrome, not of like oh, I'm not as bad as you people, but as in a sense of like, I feel like I just don't fit in a sense of like, I am testing things out. So who am I to stand here and claim I'm sober? So I have it in like less of a prideful sense. I really have it in like I feel like it's disrespectful. But I'm working on that because I know it's not true. That's just my psyche. That's
I
telling
get
me.
it. I get it. And
I appreciate you for having me.
oh my God, I love seeing your face, and I've been so excited about this conversation, and I feel like I could have 10 more hours talking to you.
Yeah,
So
same.
I think we know there'll be like a future combo. We just don't know when exactly. So we'll just put a pin in that.
So
And
I'm
then
at right now. This is the 2020 beginning of 2024 check-in.
that's right. Can you just tell everybody listening where
Yeah.
they can find you, your music, your Instagram, just follow you, stay in touch with you?
I will say I'm working on I'm writing a song right now that's about just like depression, anxiety, and stress, and kind of throwing addiction in there as well, just like really about the struggles that I've dealt with. So a lot of my social media isn't really addiction surrounded. But I'm working on that. I do think it's something that needs to be spoken about on my platform, especially with the age I'm at and the demographic I speak to, that I know listens to my music. But yes, you can stream my EP, See the Vision, LBB, MMM, PEG, When and Where is coming out soon, and PEMDAS, the song I just talked about, is currently in the works and coming out, and that's the full 5-song EP, See the Vision. You can follow me on all my social media at Tori Kay Unedited. That's TORIKAY Unedited. And yeah, you can join the shit show. It's fun out here. We're just experimenting with sobriety and music and life. So
I love it. May we all be in the shit show together.
yes, everyone's joining the shit show.
Everyone's invited.
Get on the train.
I love you.
Love you. Thank you for having me.
See you, I'm sure, very soon at an event, but let's just chit chat on social media.
Yeah, I appreciate your wisdom.
Hmm.
I'm like a little sponge. I promise I'm listening and I'm hearing you.
I know you are. I know you
Yes.
are. Okay, bye.
Love you. I feel like you're like a second mama to me. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
I wanna help you, but I don't know how. I wanna guide you, but I can't figure it out. So tell me what you need, and tell me where you bleed, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you. You seem so stuck there, holding on to some old story, still going strong. So tell me what you did, and tell me how you lived, and I will listen. I can listen. Oh, I will listen to you. Where can you go now? Can I keep you from falling down? If you just keep floating, you won't drown. There's a knowing that can be found. If you listen, can you listen? Oh, I will listen to you. There's a voice deep inside you that will be there to guide you. So tell me, what do you hear? Can you quiet your worst fear? If you listen, can you listen? Oh, I will listen to you. Where can you go now? Can I keep you from falling down? If you just keep floating, you won't drown. There's a knowing that can be found. If you listen, I can listen. Oh, I will listen.